Ida for calling my wife fat, 34M, work in a physically demanding field. Myself and my coworkers are all fit people, without a lot of body type variety. My wife, 32F, is fat. The thing is, she's always been fat. The whole time I've known her. We dated when she was fat. We got married when she was fat. She knows she's fat. She's fat, and she's beautiful. I'm happy if she loses weight, and I'm happy if she stays where she is. I think she's the most beautiful woman in the world as is. One of my coworkers, Julia, 28F, started complaining that she's too far to be loved, and fat people don't get to be loved. Julia isn't fat. She's maybe 120 pounds. She works out 5 times a week and barely ever eats. I told her that wasn't true, and that my wife was fat. She got really red in the face and started telling me I wasn't allowed to call my wife fat, that I was insulting her, and that my wife was beautiful and curvy. Carol doesn't like being called curvy. She thinks it's a label used to avoid calling people fat, because it's a dirty word to most people. I told Julia as much. Julia started threatening to tell my wife I called her fat. She pulled up her Instagram and told me she was messaging Carol that I was being mean. I beat her to the punch and called my wife, put her on speaker and asked if she was curvy or fat. Carol laughed and said, "I hate that curvy shit, fat and beautiful, baby." I thanked her, told her I loved her, and hung up. As soon as I hit end, Julia went mental. She started screaming that I was abusing my wife. When I asked how, she said I was clearly brainwashing her into accepting the term fat, to try to keep her complacent and from getting away from me. That no woman in her right mind could be okay with their husband calling them fat. I showed her a picture of my wife in a shirt that had BBW on it. She bought it for herself, BTW. She stormed off and hasn't spoken to me since. Now I just walked in today to an email from HR requesting a meeting with me. I don't think it's a big deal. I have my wife's blog for fat positivity, the shirt, and can easily call her for proof. But now, things are frigid at work, and Julia constantly gives me dirty looks when we're in the same room. She ignores me otherwise. So I'm just over here scratching my head. Ida for calling my wife fat? Edit, update. So I met with HR at 4 o'clock today. Apparently, multiple coworkers who had overheard the conversation stopped by HR through the day to give their side weigh-in. I wasn't in trouble, they just wanted my side of things. It checked out with what everyone else had said too. I still don't know which of my crew stopped by, but I owe them my life. I offered to show my wife's blog, and our rep, who's a really nice girl, told me that if it didn't affect my work, it was irrelevant. The story had been corroborated enough by others. HR reiterated a lot of what y'all said. Even though Julia initiated the conversation, I shouldn't have jumped in. It was less of a scolding and more of a request to keep my nose out of other people's business. I'm sad because I thought Julia and I were friends. We talked about our mental health struggles, the hardships of the field we're in, and heavy things like that. Won't be having those conversations any further. Julia and I will no longer be paired on teams for patient care. I was told my part in the investigation was done, and they thanked me for my time. So I think I'm going to be okay. Before I left, I told HR that if weight loss, body image wasn't supposed to be a topic of conversation, they should consider enforcing that on a company level. We have a weight loss challenge. I suggested making it a fitness challenge instead. She said they'd take it into consideration. So, that's it. I wrapped up my treatments. Everything will hopefully shake out. Haven't spoken to Julia, hoping to avoid her for the near future. Thank you all for the sanity check. Now to quote Clue, I'm gonna go home and sleep with my wife. The difference between your wife and Julia is that your wife loves herself. Julia can't even pretend to. Enteyep. The HR thing is wild. Imagine fishing for validation from a man, your married coworker, going off on him for loving his wife, threatening to DM her, and then reporting him to HR, NTA. If anything, Julia may be upset because she can't blame her insecurities on this idea of being fat, or she uses this idea of body positivity to push others into expressing fat phobia she internalizes. Sounds like Julia was fishing for OP to be like, "Oh no, Julia, are you crazy? You're not fat at all. You're beautiful." But instead he was like, no, you can still be loved if you're fat. My wife is fat and I love her. So instead of getting the fished for compliment, She got told how much OP loves his wife, and he didn't even tell her she wasn't fat. Julia sounds like she has serious issues and feeling somehow shamed for her fishing expedition going awry, and that she had basically insulted OP's wife while not getting the validation she craved. She went full throttle in the direction of trying to shame OP back in an attempt to deflect from her own feelings of deep shame and self-loathing. Bingo! You effing nailed it! Ding, ding, ding! The most wild thing is Julia was fishing for validation from a married man, and then went off the deep end quickly. Julia is controlling, emotionally labile, and passive-aggressive. Avoid and ignore as much as possible OP. For reals, Julia was deaf fishing for compliments by calling herself fat, hoping the OP will confide about how his wife is fat and how he hates it, but she wasn't expecting OP to have a healthy marriage to a confident woman. This Julia is a snake. She totally tried to flip that shit on OP when she's obviously the one with the hate in her heart. It's not abuse. Obviously, wifey is perfectly comfortable in her skin and Julia just cannot process or accept this. Yes, exactly. Yep, I think maybe a complaint to HR might be in order about the fact she keeps putting OP in an uncomfortable position by trying to coerce him into complimenting her and creating a hostile work environment. Threatening to contact his wife was a step way over the line, too. Julia probably hit the realization that she's not single because of her weight, but because she's a cunt. But cunts at least have warmth and depth. Julia can't even manage those. She has a heart of gold, yellow and cold, ding ding ding, 1000% NTA at all. Wow. Unless she is under 1.5 m, Julia clearly has a body dysmorphic disorder. She should keep her negativity to herself, save for maybe talking to a therapist about it. Good on you for phoning your wife to show her. Ha ha ha. I wish I could have been a fly on the wall to witness that. Edit. Wrong name. Ooh, a new word, thanks. I don't think Julia is having issues in the romance department because of her weight. It might be because of her attitude and how she interacts with others. People get to decide how to label and present themselves. If the wife is fine with this, then there is no real issue. It is her body and her choice. It might sound weird or off-putting to others, but that is their problem, not OP's or his wife's, exactly. Every actually fat person I know self-describes as fat, and finds euphemisms infantilizing and othering. The difference is that my fat friends don't moan about their weight. Fat is used as an unbiased descriptor that isn't loaded with moral failing. There seems to be a real change in those spaces from the toxic positivity that was prevalent to more evidence-based discussion that dismantles previously held assumptions about body size, health, and attractiveness. If the word fat becomes a descriptor like tall or brunette, then it removes the negative connotations associated with it. The fact that this woman is flipping out about it shows that she sees fatness as inherently bad. She's the one who needs HR. She is definitely the one with the issues. She is trying to gatekeep the word fat, it seems. Pretty bold for a 120 pounds person. Sounds like she has a touch of body dysmorphia, along with other issues, none of which HR can assist with. She needs a therapist, not HR. She is also a bit of a tattletale. She threatened to run to OP's wife and tattle to her, and when that blew up in her face, she runs to HR and tattles on something she has no business being involved in. She sounds insufferable, and the reasons she is single are very clear. It's not her weight or body type. She probably fancies OP as well. Yup. She should be fired. During work hours, she went out of her way to invade your personal privacy and threaten to harm your relationship with your wife. She's a crazy bitch, but don't tell HR that. If you happen to have a union, get a rep. Why won't he love me? Julia, probably. Gotta love the classic workplace drama that reads like a bad soap opera. Sounds like Julia's got a personal novella going on in her head and everyone's inadvertently cast in supporting roles. Workplace is for work, not airing your personal insecurities through a megaphone of awkward. Except she was the one saying that fat people are unlovable. So she's fat and unlovable, but somehow someone who's actually fat isn't fat? And somehow that's body positivity. Sounds like she realized what she had implied and got defensive, which makes sense for how insecure she is. Great summary. Exactly. It sounds like Julia is jealous that someone who is fat, something she is actively trying to avoid being out of her own insecurities, could be happier than she is.